Look, I don't really have the energy to make a joke right now, so I'm just gonna come right out and say, Ash Princess is fucking awful.
This is the introduction song. It's not very good, but it's not too long.
Now allow me to clarify. Ash Princess is not awful in the sense that it has a bunch of bad shit in it. It's awful in the sense that it's just lazy. Now from this point on, there's gonna be spoilers, so if you give a shit, well that was my opinion right there. Just don't read this book. It's really not interesting or unique in any way. For the rest of you, let me explain in more detail why this is so shit. So the story here is that a princess named Theodosia, or Theo, or Thora, because she needs 3 names for some reason, is the princess of a country named Astria, and about 10 years before the story begins, these people called the Calavaxians come in, and they invade the country, they take everything over, they kill her mother, and they leave her alive as sort of a, I don't know, hostage, trophy, whatever you want to say it. Like, they just keep her in the palace and occasionally torture her for one reason or another. And at the beginning of the story, right as Thora is done doing a whole bunch of world dumping in the first few pages, she's forced to kill a prisoner. But who is this prisoner? Well, he's a rebel, of course. He's one of her mother's old guardians, who are like these, powerful bodyguard wizard things, he was hiding out in the country and trying to stir up revolt, and he got captured, and then the Kaiser of the Calavaxians forces Thora to kill him. And also he was her friend when she was a kid, and he was probably her father. Look, the scene itself is actually done okay, but there's no build-up to it whatsoever. I really mean that. Like, we don't care about this guy. I don't even remember his fucking name. I'll probably remember it in a minute or two, but that's not the important part. Like, we don't know this guy. We don't know his name. We aren't attached to him. And we don't even know Thora either. Like, we aren't attached to her. Why should we really care? If they had spent a whole book and this guy had been a major character and Thora had, we'd seen what he meant to her, and we started caring about her, and we didn't want her or him to get hurt, and then she was forced to kill him, it would have been heartbreaking. Because, like I said, the scene itself was actually written okay. If it had build-up to it, it would have been great, but it didn't. So then after that, Thora decides to help out some other rebels that are still around, and just, you know what happens. You already know what happens in this book, okay? There's a prince. He's the Prince of Calavaxia. He's the Kaiser's son, but he's also super cute, and he's kind of a nice guy, even though his dad's a dick, and Thora really likes him. And then there's a rebel boy, obviously. Of course there fucking is, because you can't do these kind of books without a fucking love triangle. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little too ranty now, I'm not even making sense. But, so, Thora, like I said, is working with rebels, one of whom is a boy that she knew when she was younger, and also she thinks he's super cute, because, it's impossible for boys and girls at that age to just be friends, or just be allies, or just work together or anything. And basically, her plan, which is actually not that bad, her plan is to try and convince the Calavaxians to have a civil war. Because the Kaiser is actually not all that well liked, even among his own people, and his son is very popular. His son, Prince Soren. And so Thora thinks that, okay, well, Prince Soren already doesn't really like his dad, so if I can make him love me, and also kind of show off how cruel his father is being to me, then that can get him to just full-on rebel against his father, and then the Calavaxians will have a civil war, and then the Astrians can swoop in and try and take their country back then. That's actually not a bad plan. I'll come right out in a minute. And the parts where she's with Soren, and she's clearly manipulating him, and he doesn't get it, those are definitely the best parts of this book. Like, for several pages at a time, when they were having conversations, and she was like, coming on to him a little stronger than she really wanted to, or where she accidentally lets her dress slip back so you can see all the scars on her back from getting whipped. That's actually really good and really interesting. But it's completely undermined by the fact that Soren and Thora are, like, legitimately in love by the end. Like, Thora legitimately loves him at the end. And I'm just thinking, like, why? Because you need a fucking love triangle? That's the only reason I can think of. This whole book is just checking off boxes. We have a love triangle, check. We have one that's a bad boy and one that's a super nice guy, check, check. We have a rebellion going on because apparently no other plots exist, check. And the idea that Thora would actually fall in love with Soren also kind of ties into my main complaint about her character and a big part of my complaints about this book as a whole. See, you had an opportunity with a plot set up like this. Like, Thora has some people that she doesn't hate in the palace. You know, she has, like, one real friend, and then there's Soren, who, she likes him, and he actually treats her nice, and you have an opportunity here. Like, you could make Thora just a stone-cold, angry bitch. Okay, like, she was forced to kill her own father, and she's watched her people get enslaved and slaughtered for years, and now she's trying to fight back. And you really had an opportunity to make Thora a little bit more of an anti-hero. A lot more interesting, you know? Like she's thinking, you know, I'm kind of guilty about I feel a little guilty about doing this to him, but also fuck him. He's killed a bunch of people, his dad's killed a bunch of people, he's not innocent. And there are shades of that in this book, but at the end of the day, Thora's just way too nice. And she never really gives up anything in pursuit of this rebellion. You know, like, she has a friend named Cress, who she tries to kill, but then Cress survives. So she doesn't give up that. Like, they're no longer friends at the end, but they also kind of make it clear that they were never really friends to begin with. You know, Cress saw her as more of like a pet, something that she could control. And so, like, why am I supposed to care? And of course, the whole thing ends with some really obvious sequel baiting. Thora escapes, meets up with some other rebels on a ship somewhere. She actually takes Prince Soren captive, and just... You know what's going to happen in the next book. They're going to start fighting back a little bit more wholesale, and then something else will happen, and then there'll be a third book where they eventually win, but at what cost? Probably nothing really substantial. There'll be one or two side characters that no one cares about that dies. And, you know, I don't like just complaining about stuff being cliched. I really don't, because complaining about cliches is, in and of itself, a cliche. And also because something being cliched doesn't necessarily make it bad. You know, as long as you make those cliches good, you can at least make the reader invested in what's happening. Like, you know, Thora is, like, a princess who is being held captive, and she wants to fight back and protect her people. You know, she's a rebel, basically. That is literally the largest archetype of this fucking genre. Young adult fantasy. Which, that's not even an archetype anymore. That's just, like, the only character type that there is. But, like, if you actually took time to build her up and make it clear why she feels this way, which we sort of get that in this book. I'll give it that. We at least see, like, how cruel the Calavaxians are and why you would want to fight back against them. I get that. But you also just don't really get a sense of what Thora is like outside of that. You know, she wants to protect her people. That's it. You know, she wants to protect her people, and she likes kissing these two cute boys. And so it's just impossible to care. You know, there's no effort put into her character, so why should I even put effort into hating her? And as I said, there's no original ideas in this. There's absolutely none. All of the characters are stuff we've seen before, but with no effort put into them. You know, they're just lazy. Like, it's sort of taken for granted that, what's his fucking face? Blaze. You know, he's Thora's childhood friend. It's taken for granted that they would just fall in love. You know, like, there's not even any build-up to, like, their first kiss or anything. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. Like, she's discussing her plans with him about how she's going to seduce Soren, and Blaze literally says, well, your first kiss shouldn't be with him. And then he, like, literally goes up to her, grabs her, and kisses her, like, without asking, which, you know, that's kind of sort of sexual assault, which is gross. The evil emperor, we've seen that a million times too, and he doesn't really do anything new with it, and he's not actually intimidating or strong enough to work without doing anything new. So, like, just this whole thing, the plot, the characters, even individual scenes, just have no effort put into them. At one point, there's a masquerade ball, and nothing happens during the masquerade ball. Like, it just takes up, like, 20 pages, and it's literally just Thor walking around like, hey, I'm trying to blend in, I'm watching people, I hope they don't find out I'm a spy. That's it, there's no plot development, there's nothing. Okay, so I just took a moment to settle down a little bit and gather my thoughts so I don't rant on for another 15 or 20 minutes, but just to end this off, I really just would like to summarize what this book is. A teenage girl starts a rebellion against an oppressive government, kisses boys, leads 2 boys on, never really sacrifices anything, and doesn't have a whole lot of character to her. That's really all this is. It's a very standard plot that we've all read a million times, especially in this genre, and like I said, what bothers me most is not the fact that it's cliched, it's the fact that there's no effort being put in. Like, the editor, the author, the publisher, they all know that if you just check off these certain boxes, then it'll sell a certain number of copies and we'll make money. And more than anything, that's disappointing and depressing. So, I think, for the time being, I think I'll be done reading young adult fantasy or sci-fi or dystopia or any of that. Like, I'll probably still read more realistic young adult stuff, but for the time being, I really just am getting tired of being fed the same story over and over again, and, like, I've had that for a while, actually, but now it's like they're not even trying anymore, and more than anything, that's insulting. So, in fact, I'm probably just gonna make a whole other video later that's just a long-ass rant all about the whole genre, and I don't want this particular video to go on too much longer. So, Ash Princess, it's shit. Seriously, don't buy it. You know, there's even in this genre, if this is something you're looking for, there's better things out there for you. This book is probably the most cynical cash grab I've read in a while, and so please don't reward them for that by buying it.